I never thought a simple act of kindness would change my entire life in just 24 hours. But that's exactly what happened when I helped an elderly woman on the bus last Tuesday, a woman who turned out to be Eleanor Blackwell, one of the wealthiest people in the country. The rain poured mercilessly that afternoon as Maria Santos rushed to catch the downtown bus after her shift at the local diner. At 23, she was exhausted beyond her years, working 2 jobs to support herself and her mother, Lucia, who had spent her entire life cleaning other people's homes. Maria's feet ached in her worn-out sneakers as she climbed aboard, counting the loose change in her pocket, just enough for her fare with a little left over for tomorrow's lunch. The bus was crowded with the usual after-work crowd, faces buried in phones or staring blankly out windows streaked with rain. Maria noticed an elderly woman struggling at the fare box, her weathered hands trembling as she searched through a simple cloth purse. The bus driver sighed impatiently, and several passengers grumbled about the delay. "I'm terribly sorry," the old woman said, her voice barely audible over the rain drumming on the roof. "I must have left my wallet in my other coat." Without hesitation, Maria stepped forward. "I've got it," she said, dropping her precious coins into the fare box. It meant she would have to skip lunch tomorrow, but something about the woman's dignified embarrassment touched her heart. The old woman looked up, her clear blue eyes meeting Maria's. "Thank you, dear. Such kindness is rare these days." Maria helped her to a seat, noticing the woman's clothes were simple but immaculately clean. Her coat was well worn at the cuffs, and her shoes, though polished, had seen better days. Nothing about her suggested wealth or status, just another struggling senior on a rainy Tuesday. What Maria couldn't possibly know was that the woman she had just helped was Eleanor Blackwell, who had built a technology empire worth billions but was known for her eccentric habit of riding public transportation dressed in ordinary clothes. And Eleanor had been watching Maria long before this encounter, for reasons that would soon turn Maria's world upside down. As the bus lurched forward, Maria had no idea that by this time tomorrow, she would be standing in a mansion, facing a decision that would not only change her life but reveal secrets about her family that had been buried for decades. Maria settled into a seat across from the elderly woman, pulling out her textbook for the night class she was taking at the community college. Business administration, her ticket, she hoped, to a better life than her mother had known. Between paragraphs, she noticed the old woman watching her with curious intensity. "Studying hard?" the woman asked. Maria nodded. "Business administration. I want to start my own catering company someday." "A noble ambition," the woman replied. "Your parents must be proud." "It's just my mom and me," Maria said. "She's worked as a housekeeper since before I was born. Came to this country with nothing but a suitcase and determination." The old woman's eyes seemed to soften. "What's your mother's name?" "Lucia. Lucia Santos." Something flickered across the woman's face, recognition, perhaps? But it vanished so quickly Maria thought she had imagined it. "And you are?" the woman asked. "Maria." "Well, Maria, my name is Eleanor." She extended a hand with surprising strength. "I wonder if you might help me with one more thing today. My stop is coming up, and these old legs aren't what they used to be. Would you mind helping me to the corner of Maple and Fifth?" Maria hesitated. Her evening class started in an hour, and the detour would make her late. But something about Eleanor's request felt important, almost destined. "Of course," Maria said, closing her textbook. As they stepped off the bus together, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the emerging sunset. Eleanor walked slowly but purposefully, asking Maria questions about her life, her dreams, her struggles. Maria found herself opening up to this stranger in a way she rarely did with anyone. "My mother worked so hard all her life," Maria said as they turned onto Maple Street. "Cleaning other people's beautiful homes, raising me alone after my father left. She deserves so much more than what life has given her." Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. "And what about your father?" Maria's face hardened. He abandoned us when I was 3. Mom never talks about him. They stopped in front of an imposing iron gate that Maria had passed many times but never paid much attention to. Beyond it stood a magnificent mansion, its windows glowing warmly against the darkening sky. "This is where I'm headed," Eleanor said, pressing a code into a keypad. The gates swung open silently. Maria's eyes widened. "You live here?" Eleanor smiled enigmatically. "Would you like to come in for a cup of tea? I have a proposition that might interest you." Maria checked her watch. Her class had already started, but curiosity overwhelmed her practical nature. "Just for a few minutes," she agreed. As they walked up the curved driveway, Maria had no idea that behind those grand doors waited revelations that would shake the very foundation of everything she believed about her family, her past, and her future. And by morning, the decision she would have to make would test not just her character but her understanding of what true wealth really means. The mansion's interior took Maria's breath away. Marble floors stretched beneath a soaring ceiling adorned with intricate moldings. Artwork that belonged in museums hung on walls bathed in soft lighting. A uniformed butler appeared silently, taking Eleanor's coat with practiced efficiency. "James, this is Maria Santos. She'll be joining me for tea in the library." The butler's eyebrows rose slightly at Maria's name, but he maintained his professional composure. "Very good, madam. I'll inform the kitchen." As Eleanor led Maria through corridors lined with antiques and fresh flowers, Maria felt increasingly out of place in her waitress uniform and scuffed shoes. "Your home is beautiful," she managed, her voice small in the vast space. "It's just a house," Eleanor said dismissively. "What matters are the people inside it." The library was a warm sanctuary of leather-bound books and deep armchairs. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace, and through tall windows, Maria could see gardens illuminated by subtle landscape lighting. Once they were settled with steaming cups of tea, Eleanor studied Maria with those penetrating blue eyes. "Tell me about your mother's employers." The question seemed odd, but Maria answered. "She's worked for the Hendersons for 15 years now. Before that, the Millers, and before I was born, some family called the Blackwells." Maria stopped abruptly, the teacup halfway to her lips. She looked around the room, then back at Eleanor. "Blackwell. You're Eleanor Blackwell? The tech billionaire?" Eleanor nodded calmly. "I am. But on the bus, you couldn't pay the fare. I often travel incognito. It helps me see the world as it truly is, not as people present it to the wealthy." Eleanor set down her cup. "Your mother worked in this very house, Maria. From 1998 to 2001. Maria's mind raced. "That's when I was born." "But why did you?" "I've been looking for Lucia Santos for 22 years, Eleanor said, her voice suddenly heavy with emotion. "And for you?" The teacup trembled in Maria's hand. "Me? Why?" Eleanor rose and walked to a desk, retrieving a photograph in a silver frame. She handed it to Maria, who gasped at the image of a much younger Lucia standing in these very gardens, smiling broadly, her arm around a handsome man with kind eyes. "Who is this with my mother?" Maria whispered, though something in her heart already knew the answer. "That's my son, Thomas," Eleanor said softly. "Your father." The photograph slipped from Maria's fingers, landing soundlessly on the thick carpet. The world seemed to tilt around her as 23 years of believing she had been abandoned collided with this impossible new reality. "No," Maria said, standing abruptly. "My father left us. He didn't want us." "That's not true," Eleanor said, her voice breaking. "Thomas loved your mother deeply. He was going to marry her, regardless of what anyone thought about their different backgrounds. But before he could, he was killed in a car accident. He never even knew Lucia was pregnant." Maria sank back into the chair, her mind spinning. "But why didn't my mother ever tell me?" Why did she let me believe he abandoned us? Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Because I paid her to disappear. The confession hung in the air between them, heavy and terrible. Maria felt as though she couldn't breathe. I was wrong, Eleanor continued, her voice thick with regret. So terribly wrong. I was grieving my only child, and I couldn't bear the thought of some waitress raising his baby. I offered her money to leave town, to never contact our family. She refused at first, but when I threatened legal action, custody battles she could never afford to fight, she finally agreed. Maria's hands clenched into fists. How could you do that? How could she accept that? She did it for you, Maria. To give you a stable life without conflict. The money I gave her paid for your first home, your education. But I've regretted my actions every day since. Eleanor reached for Maria's hand, but Maria pulled away. When I saw you on that bus today, I knew immediately who you were. You have Thomas's eyes, his kindness. Maria stood again, anger and confusion warring within her. I need to talk to my mother. I need to hear her side of this. Of course, Eleanor said. But before you go, there's something else you should know. She walked to the desk again and returned with a legal document. Thomas left everything to his future children in his will. He always said he wanted a family someday. That inheritance has been waiting for you all these years. Maria stared at the document, unable to comprehend the figures written there. Millions. More money than she could imagine in several lifetimes. I don't want your money, she said, her voice shaking. It's not my money, Eleanor replied gently. It's yours. Your birthright. And I'm not offering just money, Maria. I'm offering you the truth about your father, a place in this family, and yes, an apology that's 23 years overdue. As Maria stood in that opulent library, torn between walking out the door and hearing more about the father she never knew, she faced the first of many decisions that would define not just her future, but her understanding of family, forgiveness, and what it truly means to be wealthy in the ways that matter most. The grandfather clock in the corner struck 9 as Maria paced the library, her mind reeling with revelations. Eleanor sat quietly, allowing her the space to process. I need to see my mother, Maria finally said. Tonight. Eleanor nodded. My driver can take you. Or. She hesitated, I could come with you. The thought of confronting her mother with this billionaire in tow made Maria's stomach clench. No. This is between me and her first. I understand. Eleanor wrote an address on a card. This is my private number. Call me when you're ready to talk again, whether that's tomorrow or years from now. She pressed the card into Maria's hand. And Maria? Whatever you decide about the inheritance, about me, know that your father would have loved you fiercely. The ride to the small apartment Maria shared with her mother took only 20 minutes, but it felt like crossing between worlds. From marble and mahogany to the familiar, worn comfort of the two-bedroom unit they'd called home for the past decade. Lucia was at the kitchen table, sorting coupons for the week's shopping, her work uniform already laid out for tomorrow. At 45, she looked older, years of physical labor etched into her hands and the fine lines around her eyes. She looked up with a smile that quickly faded when she saw Maria's expression. What's wrong, Mija? Why aren't you at class? Maria placed the photograph she'd taken from Eleanor's library on the table between them. Tell me about Thomas Blackwell. The color drained from Lucia's face. Her hands trembled as she reached for the photograph, touching it as if it might dissolve beneath her fingers. Where did you get this? She whispered. From his mother. I met Eleanor Blackwell today. Maria's voice was steady despite the storm inside her. She told me everything, Mama. About my father. About the money she gave you to disappear. Lucia closed her eyes, tears spilling down her cheeks. When she opened them again, there was both sorrow and defiance in her gaze. Sit down, Maria. It's time you knew the truth. For the next hour, Lucia poured out the story she'd kept hidden for over 2 decades. How she'd fallen in love with the kind, idealistic son of her wealthy employer. How they'd planned to marry despite his mother's disapproval. The devastating news of his death in a car accident, followed weeks later by the discovery of her pregnancy. Eleanor was cruel at first, Lucia said, her voice low. She said terrible things, that I had trapped her son, that I was after the family money. When she realized I was pregnant, she offered me a choice: take a settlement and leave, or face a custody battle I could never win. So you took the money, Maria said, unable to keep the hurt from her voice. Lucia reached across the table, gripping Maria's hands. I took the money for you. To give you a stable home, good schools, opportunities one never had. But I never spent a penny on myself. Every dollar went into your education fund, our housing, your future. But you let me believe he abandoned us. You let me hate him. I was wrong, Lucia admitted, her voice breaking. I thought it would be easier than telling you he was dead, than watching you grieve someone you never knew. And yes, part of me was angry, not at Thomas, but at a world where his mother could buy us off, where my love wasn't considered good enough. She squeezed Maria's hands. Can you forgive me? Maria looked at her mother, really looked at her, seeing for the first time the sacrifices written in every line of her face, the love that had driven every decision. She wants to meet you, Maria said finally. Eleanor. She says she's sorry. And there's an inheritance, millions, Mama. From my father. Lucia's expression hardened. We don't need her money. It's not about need, Maria said slowly, realizing the truth as she spoke. It's about what's right. About honoring my father's wishes. And maybe about healing old wounds. As mother and daughter sat in their humble kitchen, the photograph of a love cut short between them, the night stretched ahead with questions neither could yet answer. Would they accept Eleanor into their lives? Would they claim the inheritance that could transform their circumstances overnight? And most importantly, could 3 women connected by loss and deception find a way forward together? Morning found Maria sleepless, watching dawn break over the city from their small balcony. She had called in sick to both jobs, something she'd never done before. Some decisions required full attention. Lucia joined her, offering a cup of coffee. Have you decided what to do? Maria nodded slowly. I'm going to call her. Not for the money, but because I want to know about him. My father. And because 23 years of anger is enough. Lucia's eyes filled with tears. I'll come with you. The return to Eleanor's mansion felt different in daylight. The gates opened as if expecting them, and this time, Maria noticed details she'd missed in last night's emotional haze: the gardens Thomas had walked through, the windows of rooms where her parents might have stolen moments together. Eleanor was waiting in the sunroom, looking smaller somehow, more vulnerable in the morning light. When she saw Lucia, she stood, the 2 women regarding each other across decades of pain and misunderstanding. Lucia, Eleanor said, her voice barely audible. Mrs. Blackwell, Lucia replied formally. Maria watched as something passed between them, recognition of all that had been lost, all that might have been. I was wrong, Eleanor said simply. Can you ever forgive an old woman's terrible mistake? Lucia's posture remained rigid, but her voice softened. I'm not here for myself. I'm here for my daughter. For Thomas's daughter. Eleanor nodded, turning to Maria. I've had the lawyers prepare everything. The inheritance is yours, no strings attached. But I hope. Her voice faltered, I hope you might allow me to know you, to be part of your life in whatever way you're comfortable with. Maria looked between these 2 proud women, each shaped by love and loss in different ways. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a business plan, the one she'd been working on in her night classes, the dream of a catering company that had seemed impossible just yesterday. I don't want to just take the money, she said firmly. I want to earn it. To build something my father would be proud of. She placed the business plan on the table. This is what I want to do. Not with a handout. I don't want to just take the money, she said firmly. I want to earn it. To build something my father would be proud of. She placed the business plan on the table. This is what I want to do. Not with a handout, but with an investment. If you believe in me the way my father might have. Eleanor picked up the business plan with trembling hands, scanning the pages Maria had meticulously prepared over countless late nights. Santos Catering, she read aloud. Bringing families together through food and tradition. It's beautiful, Eleanor whispered, looking up at Maria with new respect in her eyes. Thomas would have loved this approach. He always believed in earning one's way. Lucia stepped forward, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Maria has his determination. And his heart. For the first time, a genuine smile crossed Eleanor's face. Yes. I can see that now. What followed was a conversation that stretched into hours, the three women moving from the sunroom to the gardens Thomas had loved, sharing memories and building tentative bridges across the chasm of years. Eleanor brought out albums of Thomas's childhood, his college years, the man he had become. Maria absorbed every detail, finally able to see herself in someone else, her father's smile, his passion for helping others, his entrepreneurial spirit. By afternoon, a plan had formed. Eleanor would invest in Santos Catering as a silent partner. Maria would maintain creative control and build the business herself, with mentorship from Eleanor's business connections. And most importantly, they would begin the delicate process of becoming a family, not replacing what was lost, but creating something new from the fragments of the past. 6 months later, Santos Catering catered its first major event, a charity gala hosted by Eleanor Blackwell to launch a scholarship foundation in Thomas's name. As Maria directed her small but dedicated staff, she caught sight of her mother and Eleanor standing together near the garden fountain, their heads bent in conversation, no longer adversaries but two women united by love for the same people. A distinguished guest approached Maria, complimenting the innovative menu. "You've created something special here," he said. "What inspired you?" Maria looked across the garden at the two women who had shaped her life in such different ways. "Family," she answered simply. "The one I lost, the one I have, and the one I'm building." That night, after the last guest had departed and the staff had cleaned up, Maria found herself alone in Eleanor's library, looking at the photograph that had changed everything. Her father's smiling face looked back at her, and for the first time, she felt not the ache of absence but the warmth of connection. Eleanor found her there, pausing in the doorway. "He would be so proud of you," she said softly. Maria nodded, finally able to believe it. "I know. I've been thinking," Eleanor said, joining her by the fireplace. "This house has too many empty rooms. Your catering business needs a proper headquarters. And She hesitated, vulnerability showing through her usual composure. "I find I don't like living alone anymore." Maria understood the unspoken invitation. "Mom and I would need to discuss it." "Of course," Eleanor agreed quickly. "It's just something to consider. No pressure." But Maria could see what this meant to the older woman, a chance to heal the family she had fractured, to fill her remaining years with the voices and energy she had denied herself through pride and prejudice. 1 year to the day after Maria had paid a bus fare for a seemingly destitute elderly woman, Santos Catering opened its official headquarters in the renovated east wing of the Blackwell mansion. The grand opening celebration brought together clients, friends, and family, including Lucia, who had finally agreed to reduce her housekeeping hours to help manage the family business. As Maria cut the ribbon across the new kitchen doors, she caught sight of a bus stopping at the corner. An elderly woman was struggling with her fare, and a young man stepped forward to help her. "Some kindnesses come full circle," Eleanor murmured beside her, following her gaze. "And some change everything," Maria agreed. That evening, after the celebrations, Maria sat in the garden her father had once walked through, reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought her here. From struggling to pay bus fare to running her own successful business. From believing herself abandoned to discovering a legacy of love. From resenting wealth to understanding that true richness came from connection, not bank accounts. Her phone chimed with a notification, another 5-star review for their catering service, this one mentioning specifically how the food had brought their family together in a way nothing else had. Maria smiled, thinking of the simple act of kindness that had changed everything. One decision, one moment of seeing another person's need above her own, had unlocked not just financial security but the truth about her past and the healing of 3 generations of women. As stars appeared in the darkening sky, Maria made a silent promise to her father, to live with the same generosity of spirit that had prompted her to help an elderly woman on a rainy day. To build a legacy not just of success but of kindness. And to remember always that the most important wealth isn't counted in dollars but in the lives we touch and the love we share. If you found this story inspiring, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more tales of unexpected kindness and life-changing moments. Sometimes the smallest actions can lead to the most extraordinary journeys, just like Maria's simple act of paying a bus fare changed not just her life, but healed wounds across generations.